In today's video, I have compiled 28 of my favorite Christmas DIYs for you, starting with this little snow hat. For this first little one, I'm going to use this 1x4. Now, you could also use a 2x4 for this, but just to give you an idea to show you the size difference, for me, the most important thing was just making sure it could sit on its own, and the 1x4 worked. So I'm starting about 2.5 inches to kind of create like a crescent. I'm going to bring that up to about 3 inches, maybe a little over. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you're one of those people that need it to be perfect, then take your time and be mindful. You could use like a bowl to kind of give you more of a rounded edge. I was not stressing it. Now, the dupe we're creating is this adorable little hat. It's not going to be an exact dupe because I have my own vision, okay? I need to be creative through me. So to accomplish this, I clamped it down to my little workstation here and then took a jigsaw and just followed it on around. It's a little wonky, but I love it, and we're not going to really see that later. I did sand it down and use my Dixie Belle cotton to paint this, and we're going to take these Dollar Tree stencils and use this little snowflake one. I chopped up the little snowflake one just so I had like a strip, and then I'm measuring it to make sure it's centered. I was lucky enough that my painter's tape was exactly that width and created 3 sections on the little hat, and then used a tan khaki color by Apple Barrel to just paint in some stripes here. If you're worried about the bleed, use the same paint as your base or Mod Podge before you apply your different color. I wasn't stressing it because I like rustic looking type things, and just went back over right here with my paintbrush to just touch up some areas. Using a sponge, we're just going to gently tap on our stencil, and then we're going to add on this little laser cutout I purchased in a pack from Amazon. It's a little bell, and this would really look so cute with so many different little laser cutouts, but I just wanted to use the bells. You use whatever makes you fuzzy inside. Next, we are going to create our pom-pom, and I'm just taking some yarn I picked up from Walmart and wrapping it around my finger a few times, well, many times, and then taking another strand and tying it so that all of our pieces are wrapped together. I'm slicing all the loops so this way they're kind of like frayed bits, and then just trimming it up a little bit so it doesn't look like a hot mess. Adding a little bit of glue, and that's it for this one.
Last year I thought about how things can come around just like that if everyone is here to celebrate one day.
I'm a huge fan of book decor, and when I seen these, I thought decoupage deliciousness, and I had to create my own version, and I'm going to start using a 1x4. We are going to cut it at 5 inches. I also cut a smaller one at 4 inches, so this way it sat on top, not exactly, but you know, in a little bit like a layered type of, you know, look. And then we're going to use our wood glue and our hot glue to attach these. I painted the book stack white, and once it was all dry, I picked up this napkin at Christmas tree shops and loved the little "'Tis the Season" saying to put on the side of the book, and thought the tree would look beautiful on the top of the book. But to my surprise, there was like no sneaky layers, so I had to rip the napkin apart. It was like that beautiful Charmin toilet paper, you know, that real nice fluffy stuff. Like, that's what this napkin is made of, that luxury, you know, feeling of, okay, anyhow, you guys know where I'm going with this, okay? There was no sneaky layer, and I just had to make do with it, all right? So I ripped it up, and then I used a decent amount of Mod Podge, more than I would usually use, to get these letters on here. And then I finished it off by putting even more Mod Podge over top of it, because it was a really thick napkin. Okay, I was shocked. I was so fancy. I couldn't believe how thick this napkin was. And of course, what inspired me to want to make the dupe for these books was they had like paper decoupaged on the top. So I wanted to put the tree on the top, of course, that went with the napkin. I thought it was very modern, very minimal looking that just gave some extra on there. I trimmed down some burlap ribbon and then wrapped it just one time around the whole book piece and glued it to the back. And then took some more ribbon, different little pieces, some sparkly ribbon, some check ribbon, or however you want to. It looks like flannel to me all the time. I know people call it buffalo check or whatever, but it just reminds me of flannel t-shirt. Okay, I'm just gonna address the elephant in the room. Of course I have struggles with the stapler, so I like to staple them all together. It works better for me, and then I glue it onto my project. To finish it off, I take another little laser cutout, and that's going to be it for this one.
We have our ups and downs, but when there's love, there's always a way. And oh, this time of year, we come together to celebrate. Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside.
Meet the item that really started and inspired me to make this whole wood video. I love the wood present idea. So taking this little 4x4, and it's about 3 1/4 inches ish, and I'm going to keep this neutral instead of painting it the red, the white, or the green. I thought, let's take a little bit of antique Waverly wax, add some water to it, let it dry, keep it really, neutral and natural and simple, and add some white ribbon. I love this ribbon, but it is super messy. Glitter everywhere after this. I took some just plain white ribbon to go over it just to kind of hold it in place, and then I did use a staple gun to make sure that it was stuck on there instead of just the glue, because in my experience, whenever I hot glue fabric to wood, it doesn't stay very long. So listen, I'm just being honest, okay? And before I hear any comments like these aren't exact dupes, no, they're not exact dupes. These are more of inspired dupes, okay? I wanted to create them for my home, and I just love the idea of a lot of these that are on Pinterest. This greenery I picked up from Walmart for 98 cents, and I'm just cutting it up and putting some on top here to add to the neutral aspect of it. I just love how this little present turned out. And that's going to be it for this one, people.
Last year I thought about how things can come around just like that if everyone is here to celebrate one day.
People, this dupe had me over here like, I made this, like Sandy Lumbermill does in her videos. I have so much love for this little guy. I had this spare piece of 4x4, and it's about 4.5 inches. If you want to add some buttons, make it a little bit longer. And I'm using Dixie Belle's cotton to paint this piece because I can get a 1-coat coverage and use my little heat gun on here. And this sucker was ready to go in like 20 minutes. And literally took me no time at all to make. It was fairly easy, and if I'm saying it's easy, I mean that mess. I had some floral berry bit pieces, what I don't even know, from stuff I purchased at Dollar Tree, and I thought, we're gonna make this nose. I was gonna do clay or use ribbon or whatever. I was like, nope, I want something different, something unique looking, and kind of just messed around with these and glued them into a corn looking type nose, or not corn, carrot looking. Kind of looks like corn. I picked this fluffy sock up on my recent browsing trip to Five and Below, and of course I put it I didn't realize that the sock had like these little rubber pieces on here. So, and if you're going to do this and use one of these socks, and they're only $2, you can't really beat that, and they're fluffy and beautiful. I mean, look at the pattern on this thing. They're really snug, so be careful when you're pulling this down. Just be mindful. It's going to take a little bit of patience. That was like the most difficult thing about this. I took a piece of jute twine after I cut the top of the sock off, or the booty part, or the foot part, like wherever the toes go, like I cut that off. And then I just kind of tied a little piece of twine around here, used a Sharpie to draw closed eyes because I wasn't trying to get difficult. Eyes can be hard to draw if you're not that great, so I figure most people, if they wanted to recreate this, can do a sleepy eye. And as I'm drawing this one, my other kid comes down to ask for a snack, and she's standing over my shoulder at this current moment just watching me, and here go my girls.
Only thing I can think of Oh, it's a snowman.
Very good.
It's a snowman.
You would think y'all would get it a little bit quicker since Christmas is coming, but I'll let that slide. Oh my.
It's a snowman. I'm smarter than Jalen now.
How dare you?
They were having like a serious debate about what I was making behind me, and I'm just like, really? No one knows what this is but me. Oh, I can't imagine what the viewers are going to think. Anyhow, and that's going to be it for this one, people.
This year I'll think about how I'm so lucky to have a place that I can come home to. Yes, I am on my way.
You will need 4 triangular pieces from Dollar Tree and 2 miniature village houses. Make sure they fit into these triangle pieces. They do not all fit, I know. So learn from me. Then you can use essentially whichever items you want to create your inside cubbies to your triangles. These are some of the items that I picked and some of the items I did or didn't use, but I wanted to give you guys options to see what you could create as well that I had on hand. This is essential to be able to hang it on the wall. These are little hangers. I will link them down below for you. Make sure that when you're hammering, this is the top piece, make sure that when you're hammering it in, you have it in an exact position that it is going to go through the thick wood. See how it did not come through? If you do not have that precisely on the edges, it will come through inside of your triangle. Next, I did the bottom. Now, this entire DIY is going to be done in pieces because everything takes drying time. And I wanted to make sure everything was held together really well. So I took my time with all of it. I wood glued these and then held them together quickly for a quick bond with the hot glue. But then I put clamps on it. And I let each of these dry for 30 minutes after I clamped them and got them into place. If your clamps have struggles like mine do sometimes, you can add on the little hair ties right here and it will hold them just a snug tighter. Just a little tip for you. Just a snug tighter. Some is from Walmart and the wood pieces are from Hobby Lobby. This is going to create my fake, what is this? Is that the trunk? The fake bottom of the tree. It's going to create the bottom of the tree. I really wanted this to look like an amazing wall piece, and this is probably my favorite part of the tree actually. They fit on here perfectly with a little bit of maneuvering. This is kind of when things really started to go south for me. So I'm just gonna let you guys experience this. I done ripped my glove, trying to get the glove on. I am just, this is just a hot mess. Okay. I'm gonna try and do this the best I can without getting more glue all over myself and throwing this away just yet. Oh, that, if it can happen, it'll happen to you, Brandi. It's okay. It might not seem like it, but the overall goal was to use E6000 and the hot glue gun to attach the wood to this foam. It did eventually work, but it took some finagling. For the top part of this, I wanted to create a stand. So I took a wood plank from Dollar Tree and measured it to size, and then took a miter box and cut it to size. You could also use a box cutter to score it. I'm sure that would be just fine. I happen to like tools, so any chance I can use a tool, I use a tool. And then I took a piece of 150 grit sandpaper and trimmed up the edges. To attach the top of this to the tree trunk, I tried using the rest of this E6000 and it exploded out the back. No. Ah! I mean, exactly where did I go wrong with this E6000? What did I do to it? I don't even know. The real life struggles of DIYing with me. All real all the time around here. The struggle. Oh my gosh. Anyhow, the platform fit. Ultimately, the trunk is completely put together with some E6000 and some hot glue. Then I wanted to conceal these cracks. You guys do not have to do this if that is not something you're interested in, but some methods would be the spackling in a Dollar Tree also sells some cheap spackling. You can use caulk if you have some caulk and you don't have spackling. You can use that as well, or even just layer up some thick paint. That will help also. So just a couple different ideas if you don't have this available. But this DAP paint is, or DAP spackling, not paint, is really cool when it's all dry, it's all white, and then you can just sand it. So while that was drying, I thought, let's go cut these houses. This is real simple. I made sure to make sure this was slowed down so you guys could see I was not faking any of this. I literally sawed this, and that quickly, just 2-3 seconds, it already cut down. See how simple that is? It already cut inside of it. Literally took me about 3 minutes to saw both of these houses in half, even alternating them. I showed you step by step how I alternated the houses inside the miter blocks to get a clean straight cut. Definitely recommend sanding down the edges. It has like little pieces still kind of stuck to the house, or the village pieces, whichever. They're all not houses. I think that one was a little shop I just cut up, and they're prickly, so you want to make sure that you're sanding them down. This piece was a little bit larger, but it took me no time at all to do either one of them. Just be mindful. I love tools, so I live dangerously. Do not do as I do. Be safe. Use safety measures, precautions. I purchased this paper from Hobby Lobby for $1.99 and measured it to the size of the back of the triangle box. And to save me from having to do that for each one, I then traced on the back of the paper for the rest of them and then cut them to size. They all fit in there really well at the end of the day. This is a step that is not necessary, but staining things so it all just kind of looks cohesive or matches together well is something that I personally like doing, so I decided to stain the platform. When the spackle was dry, I took some 220 grit sandpaper. You do not want to use real coarse sandpaper like a 80 or 100. It will create dents inside of your spackling and cause more work. If not, just rip all of it. And if you apply too much pressure, it'll also just rip all the spackling off. So a gentle sand with a high grit sandpaper will work out the best. It was super windy this day, so I used some spray paint to quickly put a primer coat on here. Then as I was waiting for that to dry, I figured let's start on the top of the tree. Since I'm using this for the centerpiece for my star, I just scored the top. This was tougher than it looked. I don't know what they're making these ornaments out of at Walmart, but it took me several times with some elbow grease to actually get that cut off. I did not like how it looked by itself, so I decided to use some mesh and cut that in little triangle pieces to also mimic a star behind it. It's important before you start putting your paper into Mod Podge. I also use the Mod Podge to attach the paper, but the white paint is also still easy to kind of nick or mess up, especially with the spackling in there. So the Mod Podge helps seal everything. How you want to do your houses is really completely up to you. There's so many different ways that you can accomplish your little miniature village. I like the white idea with the shiny, so I added some glitter, some gold glitter. Plus I feel like it matched the decorative paper in the background. It was just kind of going with everything. And I do shiny for Christmas. I like shiny. Then I collected all my little pieces that I wasn't sure if I was going to use, but I knew I wanted to use or felt like I was going to use. I wasn't really sure my method. This antler thing was shedding all over everything, worse than the gold glitter. So I had to calm it down and put some Mod Podge on top of it. The shiny little houses felt a little sad, so adding some red paint gave them just a little bit of happiness. A lot of the paint actually on some of these Dollar Tree items were very smudged and poorly done, so I just touched them up and it took me just a couple minutes. To place the trunk onto the center, you just want to measure either with a ruler or tape measure off to the sides and make sure they are exactly the same width apart. And then I found some E6000, the tiniest bottle ever, and used what was left of there, and attached the trunk with some hot glue for some quick bonding. To attach the rest of the pieces, I just used some hot glue. The peace sign actually is not hot glued, it's placed on there. These antlers allowed me the freedom to just kind of wiggle it on there and it stayed, which I thought was amazing because I love options and versatility of things. And if I want to switch that word out next year, I can. Here it is. Oh. If you have a drill and a drill bit, I recommend using that over this box cutter. I wanted to show you guys a way to do this for people who do not have those things accessible. Most crafters do have box cutters available, and you can just hold it in one spot and spin it in a circle and see it went right through the back of this. And then I just shoved those lights on in the holes. Then I took the star and used E6000, the last bit, and hot glue gun and attached it to the top. First, we're going to start off with this wood giant tree slice. I call it a wood giant tree slice, even though it says it's a wood sign, but it's more like a very thin slice of wood. And we're going to use 2 of these crates. Now, we're first going to just take our antique Waverly wax and we are going to stain everything. Using a baby wipe is probably the best method to apply this quickly and easily. I am actually out of baby wipes, so I'm just using a paper towel here. Now while that's drying, we're going to create a raised stencil. I'm using some DAP spackling here. My favorite is Joint Compound, but I can't get to it, and this was right over my head, so it's a little dry. Okay, I was struggling to get its crustiness out of here, but we're going to make it work by adding some white paint to this and some water. And just use a little bit of elbow grease until you have the consistency of smooth butter. And then pick out your stencil. I thought this one would go just perfect with the way that it just kind of lays when I turn it, you know, like a triangle and at the top of the tree. And then we're just going to patch it in as we go down. I did take a minute to kind of center our little crate and make sure that it wasn't going to overlap where we're going to put our spackling. And once I had that all marked up, I started applying our little mixture here. Now I have this little spatula thing because I get most of my craft supplies at Ross, and this just happens to come in one of the little paintbrush bundle things that I purchase. But don't hesitate to use a spoon. You got a plastic spoon laying around, use that joint. It will do the job just the same. I've been doing this for years at this point, and I tell you, it doesn't matter if you have crafty special tools. It is going to look like this no matter what, as long as you keep your stencil in place. And a little tip, if you want an extremely professional finish, make sure you're washing your stencil in between applications. As you can see here, there is a little bit of smudging. I'm going to show you how to fix that though. For crafter's sake, I like to call it, just to save some time, I may cut a corner or two. Okay, please don't hate me. If I'm not reselling a piece, and I'm keeping it and I'm just kind of showing you guys inspiration, I have no problem doing that. But I like to be real with y'all and let you know, like, hey, I'm not washing the stencil every time. This is why it's bleeding, or this is why there's extra. And in case you guys do that, guess what? I'm going to show you how to fix it. Like right here. Wait until this is dry, and then you're going to take a tiny paintbrush with a little bit of your Antique Waverly wax, and you are just going to go over it. And boom, it is completely fixed and it looks really, really nice. That is a good reason why you paint first or stain before you do a raised stencil like this, in the event that there is some bleed through. And even though you try to do as much as you can to prevent that, you can go back over it, and these little details will help fix those problems and give you that high-end looking finish. Here we are just addressing the dangly crusty bits that are hanging off the side of our tree slice. After this dries, it's pretty hard, so being able to kind of flick it on off there, scrape it on off, is super easy. Next, we're going to glue on our crates. Make sure you're using some wood glue for a long hold and some hot glue for the quick hold. And if you want some extra protection, don't be afraid to use a drill bit to put some screws in there and some little pieces in the back, so it really, really stays on for a long time. And these are just some little snowflake laser cutouts that I had, and I am putting different ones on the top of these trees. For staging purposes, I'm just using some stickies on the back for them to hang on the wall, but you could easily put some twine or some ribbon to add your hanger accents. These are absolutely my favorite Christmas DIY that I have made so far this year. For these little stocking holders, we're going to need 2 of Dollar Tree's wood pen holders. And for our hooks, you can use whatever you want. I have these little knob pulls that I purchased for like $1 on clearance at either Home Depot or Lowe's. If you want these to last a long time, I highly recommend putting a hole through here and using the screws that come with the piece. For crafter's sake, I am just going to glue these on here to give you guys the idea. I'm also keeping the boxes neutral. Feel free to paint these and or decoupage them, whatever floats your boat. If you're going to use this for larger stockings, because you can, weigh this down with some rocks. I'm just decorating it with some of the little wood bits, and put whatever florals you want in the top. And I had these little decorative stockings that are just darling, and thought it was super cute put on these pieces. I hated like hell that I was going to paint over this just because the design in the center is gorgeous, but I did it anyway. Took 3 coats. I was a little ticked off that it took me that many coats to get a nice coverage on this little plastic silver plate piece. And I just wanted to keep this really simple, so I'm taking this reindeer ornament piece I picked up in a pack from Walmart, and then adding some of Dixie Belle's black gilding wax right to the edges. If you do not have gilding wax, you can use black paint on your finger. It will also do the trick, or a permanent magic marker that will also do the same. Just be gentle with the brushing of it, and it just brings out all the etchings. It's absolutely gorgeous. You're going to need one of the tag signs from Dollar Tree. You could really use any type of tag sign, but this is one of Dollar Tree's tag signs. We're going to paint the back of this white. Just one coat. We just want to get that brown off of there because we're going to decoupage this gorgeous napkin on to here. And the reason I picked this napkin is because there's so much real estate. Most napkins, each little square piece has the decoration. This one did not. It only had it on 2 of the sections. So now I get to use more of that ornate design. But before we do, we're going to need to cut our little shelf piece. This is a little circular, I don't know, I call these ornaments from Dollar Tree. What do you guys call these things? It's an ornament to me, but it's a wood piece. And we just need to chop off the back and make it flat. So I'm going to take this outside with my miter saw and give it a once over. So this way it's just like this. And then I'm going to paint it white so it matches. Okay. Now, while that's drying, we're going to peel off a corner of our napkin and get all the sneaky layers off. This is a quick and easy way to just get all the little extra bits so you have the top decorated layer. If you guys are new to decoupage or you want some more information on decoupage, you have come to the right channel. I will link all the how-tos and tutorials that I have down in the description box. Even have a decoupage medium video for you to check out if you need all that information. I go into deep, extensive detail in many of them, as well as a link to my website because I sell napkin bundles down there, and this particular napkin is for sale in my Christmas napkin bundle. Anyway, now that that plug is over, let's get back to our project here. Whenever I'm decoupaging a napkin, I like to say less is more, because the more Mod Podge you use, the more your napkin will rip. Unless you come across a napkin that is as thin as this sucker. This was so thin, there was no wiggle room with this at all. And I was literally cutting the napkin into bits, trying to match every little section up just perfectly so it looked like one unified piece. It was not easy. And I've probably decoupaged hundreds of things at this point with napkins. This was probably one of the thinnest I have ever used. But I got it done, people. I got it done. Pat myself on the back there. Once it dried, I took a sandpaper and got all the extra bits around the edges. And then it was time to bring in our shelf. Our shelf looks kind of plain, you know, so I have to do something to it. So I'm going to add some of the Dollar Tree metal lace. I'm taking some tacky glue and some hot glue to accomplish this, and I'm going to cut the ribbon to size, obviously, but not go all the way around to the back of the end, the back side, where we're going to be attaching it onto our tag. To my surprise, this was fairly easy with the tacky glue. I was rather impressed. When I've used a Gorilla Glue gel to attach the metal ribbon onto, or lace onto stuff, it pops off a little bit. The tacky glue and the hot glue, it was really a nice combo. To attach the shelf, I used the tacky glue and the hot glue. I would come back in if you want this to last and not fall off over the long term. Use stapler and staple it from the back, or put some nail pieces in there, and that was it for this one. I did add a little floral at the top, but absolutely love this piece and how this came out, and you are not going to believe how well this piece paired with the 2 Christmas trees. I gotta be honest, people, I was a little bit nervous with the idea of building this tumbling tower block Christmas tree because the top is slanted and I know that the hot glue will hold it in place, but I was worried that the weight of it was going to cause it to tumble back and forth. So we'll get there. I will show you guys what I'm talking about. To start this off, we're going to need a lot of 2x2s. Now for the base, I'm doing, see how the 2x2s, I'm gluing 2x2 together, and you will need 2 sets of these. So it will be 8 total blocks just for the base of our tree. I will tell you, I used almost an entire block of the tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree to create this piece. Not the whole thing, but again, you can make this as big as you want. I'm just giving you guys the idea. So after I had these all in their 2x2 little partners, I started gluing on the base. The whole bottom piece that I have right here that you see me gluing it onto, I just had that laying around and I thought this would be perfect for the bottom of this. Use whatever you want. If you want to use tumbling blocks to create a base, do it. So here's where I started with the construction of trying to figure out how to angle this. Now, my girlfriend, Angela Jones, DIY, she has built stuff like this before with tumbling tower blocks, and she will use a little dowel to put in between. So you got like a place to press the tumbling blocks onto and apply a lot of glue. And I'm using this little bit here. And of course, you know, I think I just at this point like seeing where the pieces end up once I chop them in half. But I'm loading up the center right here with the glue, and then we're going to put our little bit right there as our brace, and we're going to start applying the tumbling blocks on the sides and going up to create our tree effect. For the entire thing, I just did 2x2. So each side of our tree here will have 4 tumbling blocks, and I used tacky glue. I know, tacky glue. I usually use wood glue and hot glue, but I had the tacky glue kind of just sitting right next to me, and I'm low on wood glue, and you know, you got to tip it over and then squeeze it out, and I was like, it was just easier to use the tacky glue for this. And I gotta be honest with you, it worked out really flippin' well. I was not disappointed at all. So you can see me hesitating every time I go to put on the next layer because one, I was trying to move the tumbling blocks around so they were not all facing the same exact way. So once I put the stain on here, it would have different variations in the tree. And two, I wanted to make sure that the layers were shorter than the next layer. So if I put it the opposite way, it definitely was not hanging in, it was hanging over, if that makes sense. So it took me a little bit as I went up the tree just to make sure the placement was perfect. In total, this took about 50 tumbling blocks, and I let this sit and dry for about 3 hours before I came back in to do anything to the piece. If you want to stain them beforehand, you go right ahead. I usually come back in and do that afterwards. Now I am spraying this with water. I know you guys are like, what the hell are you doing? Listen, it is a quick and easy way to spread your antique Waverly wax around when you have water. I could have just dunked my brush in the antique Waverly wax and then some water, but spraying it down, a little bit of antique Waverly wax, and then we painted it on up, and it looked like this once it dried. I'm taking a little bit of Waverly's white chalk paint here and just kind of going around the edges to add a little bit of depth and to kind of bring out the tumbling blocks. So it just gives it more of a branch feel for me. You guys don't have to do this step if you don't want to. Once this dry, I came back in with some little accent pieces. These are just laser cut pieces that I had and some little half of beads and glued them on to the piece in random sections. You could color yours, you could put glitter on yours, or add greenery. Any of that would look good as well. I just wanted to add these and keep it as neutral as possible, and I thought that the laser pieces would pop out having that white in the background. I seen this little globe card holder. It's really to give a gift card, and thought, let's turn this into a little nativity scene. How cute would that be? And picked these ornaments up at Walmart as well. And I just took them and glued them on in there. How cute did this turn out? I was inspired by these little cloth trees I've seen and thought, how can I make this simple? So I picked up this bell, and I'm going to use this little 1-inch styrofoam ball and this rustic looking stocking. My bad, I hit the glue gun. And we're going to need a glue gun as well. I cut all the material off that is red and just kept this snow part. I cut it into 3 different size strips for the bottom, the center, and the top, and then took this red ribbon and cut that into 2 different sizes as well. It's got a little gold in the center and it's shiny. I felt the 2 went really well together. Next, I just took apart this bell. Sorry to adjust the camera there. Was not giving you guys a good angle. And then I glued the styrofoam ball on the top, kind of for like my pointy end, and started gluing the large sections on the bottom. Now you can cover the bottom completely if you want. I did not want to cover the bottom completely, which is why I picked this red bell. So I left a little exposed. I like shiny for Christmas and thought the bell goes well with the colors that I picked for this. For this section, I am making a little U with the ribbon. I want to do 2 different styles on this. Of course, I can't just do one. I'm just don't know what's wrong with me always. I'm like, let's do more. So I took a bunch of these and just made a pile of them. I did 2 different sizes. These ones are a little bit larger for the bottom area, and then the ones that I clipped for the top are a little bit smaller, and then just glued these around the sides. When I've seen pictures of these, I honestly thought that this was going to be a lot harder than it was. And you guys know me, I have no problem dealing with the struggle. So I was like, let me take this on. But really, it is just as simple as I'm making it look in this video. It really was just gluing them on, sticking them on. It took me about 15 minutes to make this. Really no time at all. Now, I did notice once I got to the top of this, if you're going to use one of these bells, the area gets a little smushed with the space and you can't really put them on there properly. So I cut them in a triangle shape at the very tippy top. And then a little tip for you guys, I use one of these little dowels, and when it gets all glued up, you can easily just kind of stick it to whatever extra glue is around, and see I'm just twirling it up, collecting all the glue. It's pretty great. Once I got to the top, it was hot up there. Ooh, it was so hot. So I kind of allowed that to dry open like that before I put more glue on top. For this project, you're going to need some little square posts. Now, these are some scrap pieces that I had. They're kind of small for this, so I cut them to size and put 4 together to make a larger square. And I didn't have enough for the smaller square that's going to go next to it, so I improvised with the 3 and made it work. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. Then I took some burnt umber acrylic paint, and I took some black acrylic paint and dunked it in some water in a cup. You can use a bowl, whatever you have available, and just dunk the pieces in there for a quick stain. This takes 2 seconds. It is so fast. If you want the color darker, dunk it again later, then put it to the side for them to fully dry. That's it. Next, I took some dowels and wrapped them in white twine. And you will need 2 of these for this project, 1 for each of the little squares. This is a small project, so they are about 3 inches and 4 inches in height, and these little squares I cut to about 2 inches and 1.5 inches in height. So after they dried, I took some wood glue. I love Titebond, it's my favorite wood glue, and I took some hot glue. See this little 3, how I put the 1 in the center of the back, and that's how I made that work. And then I'm gonna glue the 3 right on to the larger one so they're like next to each other. When this happens, your glue seeps through. I just take a little down and smoosh it off, and it usually wipes right off. But you gotta do it while it's hot. Next, I took a stencil that I had and put it in the center. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to do this part, but I'm using the very center of this, and I'm taking a dry brush, and I'm taking, sorry, my nose is itching. And then I'm taking some red paint and putting it on there, and then I also add a little white onto it, and it looks so good. I let these dry about a half an hour before I decided to put the dowels on. You can also add some crafting glue for a more secure bond later. I then cut the little tip off of these ornaments that I got from Walmart. I just thought they were so rustic looking, and then took some white twine around the bottom. For this DIY, I'm using a wooden brown slice that came in a pack I got from Hobby Lobby, 2 large wooden rustic trees I got from Michael's, and they were 50% off. And this was a Dollar Tree tree, and I'm cutting the little star off the tip. You don't have to use any metal if you don't want to. I also got that metal from Hobby Lobby. I'm taking that metal and putting it over this little wooden tree, and wanted the background to match the other trees, and figured I'm going to go dark instead of light because I'm going to add some snow on the bottom of that slice, and thought this would pop a little bit more. Then I'm taking this the metal, not the wood, and I am trimming it with these shears. It is very bendable, but it is sharp, so you can see me wearing a little glove. You can wear actual gloves, working gloves, that will protect you a little bit more. These work fine for me, and I'm just trimming the metal to size. Now, for whatever reason, this little part fell off. I will glue that on later. You guys will get to see me glue that on later. It didn't stop me from continuing to clip around it. When I was all done cutting the metal, I then took some hot glue and put a very small amount at the top and pressed it on. I then took a very small amount and put around the sides and glued this little piece that broke off back on. Next, I took the rustic trees, the thicker wooden trees, and glued one on opposite ends in like a side to side type manner. I put a little dowel behind this. I thought I filmed it, but it's not. I'm not showing it, so I must not have filmed it. But there's a little dowel helping hold that thin tree up because it was wiggly. So if you guys are going to do this, see the little dowel? Put the dowel there. And then I put snow everywhere. Oh. Oops. Shake, 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 shake. So I try to pick them up just because I never know when I'm gonna get an idea for one of them. And for this DIY, I'm just really creating a little ornament type thing to hang out. However, I don't know why I hot glued this thing on here, because I planned on spray painting this. So if you're going to redo this, do not spray paint this little bow thing on, or do not glue this little bow thing on top of here before you spray paint it. Spray paint it first and then glue it, because I ended up taking some painter's tape and covering over the red ribbon thing and then spray painting it. A little tip, you do want to put a sealer whenever you're spray painting ceramic that is finished. It is glossy, so it will have little nicks in it before you start working on your project. It will still get some little nicks in it. If you want to wait the 24 hours for it to completely cure, it's a little bit more stable. However, I did not, so there are a few nicks at the bottom, but just a little tip for you guys. Sure, this beautiful board is so smooth, and I'm taking an 800 grit and going over the entire piece to accomplish that. Make sure all your dusty bits are off there. Use a microfiber cloth, you know, your leaf blower, whatever you got on hand. I'm no one to judge. I use it all. And here I'm just kind of sitting them next to each other. Since I'm creating a painted set, I want to make sure that the pieces of wood are going the exact same way. So I'm going to leave the live edge piece facing the center, so it looks like both these pieces are kind of facing each other once we paint them on our boards. On one board, we're going to paint a tree, and then on the other board, we're going to paint a snowman. And we want these kind of looking at each other, so we are going to only paint half of each. Here I'm sketching half of the Christmas tree, and I'm just putting the edges where I want to make sure I don't paint past. If you guys are not good at drawing or sketching or etching, use a stencil, use your Cricut, paint out some lines, or take some painter's tape and just put an edge there so you don't go beyond that. These ideas are not to discourage you and like, Brandi, I can't paint like that. It is to inspire you to take the idea and create it and make it your own. I know everyone is not able to do exactly certain things that other creators are, but I'm always going to try and give you guys options to be able to recreate exactly what I'm doing. And here I'm just showing you the little outline on the tree that I created. Now the next board, since I want them to also be about the same height, I'm putting them back to back, and I'm going to start the snowman head roughly about where I have the top of the tree. And of course, we're going to start out one smaller, and then if you want to do a big belly and just go all the way down, you go right ahead. I decided to do 3, like most snowmen. You know, they got the little chest area and then their voluptuous little bottom area. And here I'm just showing you that we have that all traced out for me to be able to start our painting. Typical trees are not just one green. You know what I mean, people? They got a little variation. And we're going to do the same thing with ours using these 3 colors. And for our trunk and some accents, I'm going to be using these 3 colors. Even though we're not really going to see it, we're going to start off with the base of our tree. And I'm going to just pull that black and brown that I put on half of the paintbrush, a little bit of black and a little bit of brown, and pull it straight on down to create the base where our roots are. Every single step I make creating both of these painted pieces, I make sure that they're completely dry before I move on to the next, so we do not smear the paint. The trick to creating your own painted pieces that look like you purchased from a store is to make sure that each part of your painted project is exactly what it's meant for. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm going to try and explain it. So here, for example, I am creating the outskirts, basically like the long pieces of our tree. And I'm using 2 colors, the very dark and the medium green, to do that. These are our very long sections. We are not going to take our branches any further beyond this point. Now, to save time, because I wanted to break this down as much as possible, I was using, see the heat gun? I was using the heat gun in between here to dry the sections. Again, you want to make sure everything is really dry. I'm now coming in with the really light green and mixing that with the medium green and doing smaller strides. And I'm going in between the gaps that we left with the darker green. This is going to give us the individuality and appearance that our tree is layered and a high-end look. I'm doing my very best to do this in one singular stroke by taking it as far as I want it to go and dragging it right towards the middle of our project. After I dried that section, I then came back in with different color variations and carried on with dragging those lines in between other lines, making some longer and some shorter. Here I've decided to create these wonky looking little branches, and these are really just going to serve as a guide for me as we start our pouncing that gives it a little bit of a 3D effect. One of those sea sponges would be really great for this if you have it. I do not, so I just rolled up a piece of paper towel, and then I took a few different colors and started pouncing on our tree. Gently, I didn't get wild with it, and I stayed in the strokes of the tree. And this part is super, super important to make sure that everything else is dry as you go, to make sure that it stays like this. If you're interested in more of a detailed tutorial on how to paint a Christmas tree, let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do a tutorial Tuesday on this. For the sake of time, since we're about 6 minutes in, we're going to speed this up. Next, we're going to bring in the sponge. This is just a regular disc sponge. I cut off a little section of it, and we are going to take that really light antique white color, vanilla color, either one would work for this, and we're going to just dab on the ends of our Christmas tree, the far pieces that we have sticking out, to give it an extra added look. Once you're happy with that, pick out your accents and glue them on your tree, and that's going to be it for this one. For our snowman, we're just going to be using these two colors. The gray is to help us give a little bit of that 3D shade look. Starting out, we're just going to take white on our paintbrush, and I'm using an angled brush for this part, and I am going to just create our outline. I do find that whenever I'm doing something circular, it helps give it a more realistic look. If the whole way that you're painting it, you are keeping that circle motion with the paint. Once it's dry, we're going to come in with a little bit of that gray, and we're just going to put it on the very tip of our slanted brush, and then put some of the white on the back of the slanted brush. And then we're just going to really go around our edge here, and we're going to continue with that circular motion. Once your project's completely dry, we're going to draw on our little face. I know I started off camera. I forgot to film it. Sorry. Since we want our little guy looking over at the tree, we're going to create the illusion that his eyes are looking that way. So to do this, we want the back end of the eyes to be slightly flat instead of completely rounded. For our smile, we're keeping it super simple and just using some little dots here. And then to color in the nose, I'm going to use some pumpkin orange color and paint that in. And for the eyes and the mouth, we're going to bring in the Sharpie. You can paint these in if you want as well. I find it easier when you're doing something easy like this and kind of detailed, that Sharpies are a perfect tool for the job. For the accent pieces, I just picked out colors and things that complemented the tree since it's a set, and I simply love these pieces. I want to sell them in my vendor space, but I just do not know if I can part with them. I love them both so much. For this rustic tree decor piece, we're going to take a 1x2 and cut this into two different pieces about 6 inches. Then we're going to angle our miter saw at 45 degrees and cut it in the shape of a little house. Look how cute these little guys are. Super cute. So, you know, that's how you can make a house too. Now we're making trees, and we're going to nip the sharp edges off of our little house just by drawing a little curve on here. And then we're going to use a vice grip to hold our piece into place and sand these suckers on down. Took me about 10 minutes per piece to do the sanding. We're going to make 3 trees, but the third one, we're going to use a 1x4, and we're going to cut that one slightly different. So we have 2 trees, the same style, and 1 a different style. And here's our little tree once it's all done. I did use 800 grit sandpaper, the same one you see me use in the first project, to really smooth these trees out. If you want more detailed information on how to cut these trees, I did make a tutorial on that. I'll link that down in the description box for you. And here is our third tree. I love this one so much. Now we're going to create an ombre effect on the 2 that are the same style, and we're going to just stain this single one, and we're going to put a stencil on this one. To create the ombre effect, I'm using the same antique Waverly wax, and we're going to start at the very top of our trees and bring it on down. We're not going all the way to the bottom. We're going to leave a little bit of a gap here where the neutral wood is, just like this. And then we're going to take our paint, and we're going to start at the very bottom and bring it up as well to where the neutral wood meets the antique Waverly wax. Once I had this finished, I waited until they were completely dry to start our next part. For this next part, you're going to need a fairly decent size paintbrush. I'm using one this size. I think it's perfect for this job. And I'm taking a little bit of the antique Waverly wax and doing a nice healthy coat on one side of the brush. And then I am dipping the opposite side in the paint, and then I'm kind of just rubbing it on the plate here to get a nice blend. So this way, when I put it on my wood piece, it is going to be fairly blended on the brush already, and it's going to start giving me that effect on our wood piece. This is now the part where I'm going to tell you, you're also going to need a paintbrush just for your white paint and a paintbrush just for the antique Waverly wax. So once you're using your blend brush, you can come back with both those other brushes and smooth out the more dominant sections of your wood piece and keep that ombre blend right there just as perfect as it is. Now it's time to add on our little stencil to our last little tree. Hey, which one of yous are over there judging my stencil? Listen, I know it's seen better days. It's a little crusty, but it's got some sticky on the back of it. And we don't just go throwing stencils away around here because we don't like to weed out the Cricut machine. Okay? Nobody likes that kind of negativity in their life. So let's move on, okay? I'm just using a regular paintbrush to stipple in these little holes. It's super simple. You can use whatever you want, the makeup sponges, regular sponges, paper towels, just, you know, get your stencil on, okay? Super simple. Peel this off, put your sealer on there. And if you want to leave these trees just like this to set around, you go right ahead. But we're not going to stop there. I cut a 1x2 and I beat the board up. I put some dents in it, make it look a little aged. And we're going to use one of my favorite staining techniques to create a colored appearance inside of this wood. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, white acrylic paint would have been better, but I am completely out of white acrylic paint. So I had to use the chalk paint. I like using acrylic paints for this. They just work better. Sometimes the chalk paints leave like a residue when you're trying to do a stain. The sucky thing about this technique is it only looks authentic if you follow the grain all the way around the piece of wood. So it is a little time consuming. It took me roughly an hour to do this to this little piece of wood that we're going to use as our base for our tree decor. I am sure that the piece would have probably looked just as fabulous if we would have just put some antique Waverly wax over it, but I can't do that. Sometimes I'm extra. And in this case, I was picturing this at the center of a table with the wreath around it. And I just really wanted to have something extra popping through whatever you might put around the base of this, just to give it a little extra. Oh my gosh, that looks amazing. look. Once you have all your colors on there, you can take a piece of sandpaper. I would recommend 120, 150 grit. This is at 80. It was a little bit rougher. I should have known better. It did leave a couple scratches, so I had to take it out and use a 200 grit to just knock off the extra scratches. I love doing it this way because using that stain, it really seeps into the wood. So when you take that extra layer off around the top, it just makes it look very, very natural. Now, I picked this dowel up from Home Depot and at the time did not realize that I didn't have a drill bit the same size. So for staging purposes, so you guys see the end result, I did use hot glue, and I highly discourage that for a final end result with something that you want to last. It will not hold on here. I do plan on going and getting the proper drill bit to put holes in the bottom of the trees and in this little wood piece, so that way I know that it will stay together using wood glue. This is probably one of my favorite Christmas projects I have ever made. I'm absolutely in love with this piece. To create our wall palette star, I'm using a 1x2 and I cut that down into 5 different pieces. I have 3 longer, 2 shorter, so it's a little bit different, and it beat up the boards minimally, not a whole lot. I'm taking some antique Waverly wax. It's watered down just to change the color on these slightly, but still keeping it pretty neutral. Once they were dry, I placed them face down and then cut these stakes I picked up for $1 from Dollar General. Are y'all following me on my Browser Brandi channel? Because if not, you're missing out. We go shopping, we find deals. I try to keep you up to date on all the newest things. I'm just saying, had to plug it. Now, I cut these stakes down and we are going to glue them onto the back of our palette. And we're going to use a nail gun to make sure that these are in here. I could clamp it, wait 24 hours, but I don't have that kind of time. So we are going to just use our nail gun and get this joint put together so we can just move on with this cute little DIY project. It is so flippin' simple. I cannot wait to show you the end of this. Flip your piece over once you have it all together, and then we're going to put 5 points on this, making a star. Now, I just eyeballed this, people. For those of you that need perfection and precision, you do you and get out your little measuring pieces and bits and do what you got to do. I eyeballed it, and then once I was happy with it, I brought in my drill and put screws in the holes that I marked. And I know you're like, Brandi, what are we doing here? Listen, it should look like this. And that's going to be it for this DIY. You take some ribbon, some twine, whatever makes you fuzzy inside, and you create a hanger on this piece. I used some bells as an accent for the top of this. I love this piece. And you can switch out the ribbon all year long. How cute would this look in 4th of July colors? To create our little rustic snowman, you're going to need a base. This I had in an IKEA pack and I thought it would just look perfect. And we're going to need 3 wood slices. Now, each one is a little bit bigger than the next. Of course, our head is the smallest. Once we have it all tiered properly, we're going to need to create a sturdy base for this to attach to. And I cut down a shim to accomplish that. And of course, I'm trying to bust out the wood glue and it's all stuck in there, and I got lazy and just screwed off the lid, and it then poured out onto our wood slices. Don't be pretending like you guys don't get tired of pulling that sticky stuff out your wood glue. I know you do, okay? You're not alone. To make sure our shim stayed stuck on there immediately, I added a little bit of hot glue in the sections I didn't have any wood glue, and then let this dry for about 5 minutes before I carried on to our painting. I'm just using white chalk paint for this part, and I'm going to then come in to draw the face after this completely dries. I am taking a little bit of it and brushing around the edges of our wood as well, so it just all looks blended in. This is a little snowman I had left over from last year that I got from Walmart The sucker was on it really well. I had one hell of a time getting this little hat off of here. Pulling one hat off of a snowman and put it on another snowman. For the face, I'm keeping it very simple. We are painting on our little orange nose. I kept the eyes in the shape of like an oval. And for the smile this time, instead of doing dots, I made like little squiggly lines. For his little scarf, I'm taking some Dollar Tree fabric that I have on hand and I'm cutting it about 7 inches long, and we're going to just create that little dovetail effect at the very end of it. Wrap it around his neck, glue it on him, and then we are going to glue our snowman onto our base, and that's going to be it for this little guy. Give these little gnome ornaments an upgrade. I picked these up at Big Lots on clearance last year. They're really rustic. I absolutely love these little joints. We're going to use this napkin. Hey, I never perpetrated and said I was going to use different napkins for every DIY, okay? I mean, I could. I probably have more napkins than anybody I know. I also sell, if you're interested in any of these napkins, I do sell them on my website along with decoupage kits on my website. All right, now that we got that plug in there, we are going to add little accents right onto the hat area of the gnome. And I'm only putting Mod Podge in the spot where I want the hat to be at. And I'm also kind of ripping the napkin in different sections along that wreath. So every single hat looks slightly different, but it all matches because of the color and the style. Once it's completely dry, I took an 80 grit piece of sandpaper to shave off our excess, and I could comfortably rip the extra napkin off of the bottom parts. But you do not want to do this if your napkin is wet at all, because you will just pull the napkin right off. So make sure it's completely dry before you go doing that. To create a little bit of division, I'm going to take some tacky glue and make a little line right at the bottom of our hat. Keep a gap there to put a little bit of hot glue so we can get an immediate bond with this ribbon I have here, and we're going to let that sit. And while that's sitting, we're gonna bring in the glitter. And we're gonna put more tacky glue at the very top where our little pom-pom is and just sprinkle that sucker on up. And that's gonna be it for these pieces. I just wanted to keep it super simple, and I love how these turned out.
Hold up, I am on my way. I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go outside.
I wanted to show you guys how you can kind of see the beauty in a napkin and not use the whole thing and just cut it up into pieces to create your own unique project. And for this, I took some Waverly's chalk paint, let that completely dry so we had a nice base so our napkin pops on here. And then we took our medium, I put some at the very bottom, and then I cut the joy out with the little flower. Well, I ripped the joy out. I like to rip my napkins mostly. And then we're going to take our medium and just put it in the spot that we need to put it in to apply our little word here. One thing that's really important when you're working with napkins is to keep the Mod Podge to a minimum. Less is always more, I say, whenever you're doing this stuff. The more Mod Podge, the easier it is to rip your napkin. And whatever is not applied, I like to kind of take my paintbrush. A fan brush works really good for this little trick. And you can kind of push down your brush underneath that napkin, see what isn't completely attached, and then you can gently see how I'm just using it to push it open. And then I can take it and push it back because you have just enough Mod Podge on the brush to be able to do that. So I want to start trying to blend the napkin in with everything, and I'm putting a little bit of gray paint on my finger and just kind of dabbing it. This is giving it a little bit of a textured appearance to kind of match that galvanized metal. And before you go dry brushing over it, you want to make sure it's completely dry so you can come back in and not smear your paints, because if you try to do this over it while it's still wet, it's just going to smear and it's not going to give you this textured appearance to look like your paint is kind of blending in with the galvanized metal. Take some sandpaper, sand off your extra, seal it on up, and you're all done with this one. we're just gonna melt off all the extra bits to make them nice and plain, just red envelopes. They do sell plain metal galvanized ones if you want to just get plain ones. I particularly wanted these red ones for Christmas, even though it's Valentine's Day. I want to show you a little trick. I always talk about not using hot glue for your end all be all bond, and this is why. Look how easy that just came off just by heating it up. Make sure you're using Gorilla Glue Gel or E6000 if you are DIYing anything. So this way you have a long-lasting bond with your project. It don't just fall apart by only using hot glue. We are painting the inside of these envelopes. Just one easy coat of white chalk paint and letting that dry completely for our base for our little napkins. And I just ripped the Merry Christmas section out of the one napkin, and we're going to just put that on here. I find that whenever I'm doing like a really small section of a napkin, using my finger or just the brush that I'm having my medium on to apply it is simple enough to minimize the wrinkles. To blend the napkin in a little bit, I'm just taking a little bit more paint and kind of dry brushing around the edges, and then I'm taking these two wood snowflakes and painting them white as well. We're going to attach our flowers on here using some Gorilla Glue Gel. I want to make sure that these snowflakes stick on to our metal, and this is a really good bonding agent for that. Sometimes less is more, and sometimes I don't really care. I can't help myself. More is more, and I gotta put it in there. So I'm taking these little twiggy looking pieces and I'm putting them on the front of our snowflake with some hot glue and Gorilla Glue Gel, and then I am attaching our little flowers that we made at the very beginning of the video, and we are going to attach them right onto the front of our little envelope. Decorate the inside how you want, and that's going to be it for this one. I have probably about 100 palette DIYs on this channel somewhere in the content because this is my jam right here. To attach the palettes, we're going to do that on the front, what I would typically use, and take some bits of painter stakes. I had laying around. Listen, it was laying around. It was easy. It made sense. Okay. Plus I put some extras at the end as a brace. So once this hangs on the wall, it pops out just a little bit. I dry brushed some of our Waverly White chalk on here, completely dried that off. And then we are going to apply our napkin to this. I will tell you the best way to approach this is section by section and start in the middle or at the bottom or the top. Pick something and go from there. Don't just do the whole thing, because when you go to cut the napkin in between these slits, it is not going to be stuck on there properly. So little by little, and then apply, and then little by little, and then apply. Let it completely dry. I'm talking a good 30 to 40 minutes before you try to remove the excess napkin. If you want to just, leave the napkin on there, then that's you, but I can't do that. So I take an X-Acto knife and I cut real close to the wood on one side. And then we have the frayed bits left on the other side. Well, we got to get that out of there because that looks tacky and we can't have that on our wall decor. So I'm taking an 80 grit sandpaper and we are going hardcore on this. I also want this a little bit rustic, so it's torn slightly. If you do not, use a 200 grit sandpaper. Once you've got all your crusty bits left gone, you're going to go in with a Mod Podge. And I do want to reiterate, I seal all these. So go over all of your projects once you're completely done. They deserve to have a top coat on them. I wanted to create a little hanger for this to just give it a little something extra. So I'm taking a square dowel I had laying around. You could use a round one. It will do the job just the same. To attach our little dowel, we're going to just take some twine and cut it to about 6 inches. Honestly, if you want to make this shorter or longer, that's completely up to you. I was kind of just eyeballing it. And you can attach this however you want. I am pulling the twine through the last gaps on each side of the rose. and then we are bringing the ends up to the little dowel. Next, we're gonna bring in the stapler and we're going to staple these pieces onto our dowel. However, it never seems to go well for me whenever I'm trying to use a stapler. So of course, first the staple didn't go in far enough, so I had to bust out the butter knife and then get the staple out of there, and then we run out of staples. So I had to go get more staples, and it was something. It's so funny to me whenever you're making stuff, you don't plan for all these little things that just take you extra time. Shit happens, right? But we get it done. Next, I just took a bunch of floral bits and attached them on here, also using the staple and some Gorilla Glue gel. And that's going to be it for this little piece.
Hold up, I am on my way. I'm in motion. Let's go to the ocean. Yeah, let's go outside. We can hang out on...
I used 3 different size wood rounds, and we're going to take this camper napkin and just dissect it. We're going to do this by basically just ripping up little sections we want to put on our round pieces. And to give us a nice clean base for that, I'm just putting a light layer of chalk paint on here, letting it dry. And I did kind of dry brush around the edges just to make it look like that white is blending into our wood. So once we get our napkin on there, it just all looks cohesive. And of course, if you want to, once you get this on here, you can take a little bit of white paint and dry brush around the napkin as well to make it look like it's more blended in. It's completely up to you. If you want to, you can even drill a hole in these to put your hanger on it. I actually just stapled some twine onto the back of these. And if you have a napkin piece like with this one, it's a little too wide. So to get it to actually set in there, I'm carefully ripping off a little bit of it. And then we're going to just use our medium to attach the pieces, and we're going to make it look like one. Now for this, I will say it is super, super, super quick. So just use a little bit of Mod Podge, tappity tap tap that napkin on there, and then just paint right over it. I wouldn't even wait for it to dry, to be honest with you, because it's so tiny and it's already wet. But you can see here how I'm just using the little tears and making sure they meet up so it still looks like it's all one. You never know that there is a little rip in there. And that's going to be it for these. With these metal pieces, I've picked up some of them and I wish I picked up more of them. Keeping this DIY super simple, I just used some glue to attach, which I'm sure you guys have seen this done many times, to have the little candlestick glued to the bottom. And then I'm just taking some Rust-Oleum 2x white spray paint. This is just a little greenery piece that I had laying around that I just spun into a circle, and I'm putting in here to give it like a farmhouse style rustic look with a little acorn. And this another one. I love this piece. It's, oh, here I'm actually showing you the spray paint. I'm failing as a YouTuber. I don't know why I didn't do that in the rest of the video. This actually gave me some trouble trying to glue these pieces on here. So little tip, this worked out just fine with the wood slice and the little dowel, gluing it right here, but I struggled getting the metal piece of the bottom of the tree on here. So I ended up taking a popsicle stick and cutting it in half and gluing that to the bottom and then gluing the dowel to the popsicle stick. My battery died on my phone, I'm sorry. So you didn't get to see me huffing and puffing over that. Things from Dollar Tree. I drop out a DIY with them every chance I get. For this one, you're going to just need to glue some popsicle sticks onto the back and then pick out a napkin. We are ironing this on here. I love, okay, now, so if you're also familiar with me, you know I don't like painting palettes. This is not the most efficient way to do a palette. However, when I do iron on napkins to any type of wood surface, I prefer painting and making sure it's nice and thick. And then I take some Mod Podge and put it on so heavy and let this dry for about 2 hours. You got to be kidding me. People, this is literally like my favorite Mod Podge brush, and I don't know what its problem was, but it was falling apart, and I was just, I quit. I didn't even film all of it, but that brush, there is definitely pieces stuck in that Mod Podge underneath this napkin. Don't tell nobody. Okay, anyhow, I cut the napkin down to size, and then you're going to want to peel the back layer off of the napkin before you take your wax paper and your little iron and iron the napkin on there. If not, I made the mistake before. It's not a big deal. It just does come apart a little bit, but some Mod Podge just seal it right back on there. Make sure that when you're ironing, you do this really well on the edges, but be mindful because it will stick. See how it's stuck a little bit there? If you do not have the napkin covering your Mod Podge, it will stick a little bit to the wax paper. And then you just take some sandpaper and really go through it. For these palettes, I use an X-Acto knife to cut in between, and then take the sandpaper, see how it's got the little divot, and go in between here and gently, you want to gently do this. You want to gently do it, or your napkin will rip everywhere to shreds and it will be a hot mess, and you don't want it to be a hot mess. However, look how nice it turns out. And then you take a little bit of Mod Podge, not enough, because if you take a lot, it's going to be all bumpy and weird. I don't know what happens to the napkin, but you don't want to do that. So just lightly brush it on the edges. A good idea when you're creating a floral piece is to start with a base. So I'll take a look at all this glitter. Such a mess. It was everywhere. I had to show you guys, like this little flower thing, messy. Anyhow, I take a little piece of cardboard or something and I'll cut it and start attaching everything to the cardboard for a base. So this way you kind of have something to work with and you're not just kind of gluing it right oddly on your projects. This is all little pieces I got from either Dollar Tree or Walmart. They cost about $1, and I just put them together, and you can do your little arrangement on the top here however you want. This is just how I did it.